In 2016, our guest agreed to complete the Vasaloppet, a 9-mile run through the snow-covered Swedish forest without ever having had skis on. This is just one of several challenges Josh has faced in recent years. To emphasize that most things are possible, even if it does not look like it. He's often referred to as the charity adventurer. And now you're here with us.
Yes, I am.
Thanks for taking the time to be here.
Thank you for having me here.
It's great to have you here. Kim, this is an exciting guest to have, isn't it?
This is a different and exciting guest. This is like the role reversal. You're an American that have adventured out in the world. You're not we're normally doing the opposite, getting people to come to your country to take advantage of the great system they have there with college, sports, etc. But you've gone completely the other way.
It's to prove that planes fly both directions. Absolutely right.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah, it is. So a couple of weeks back, I met you. You were a guest speaker at the Right to Play lunch, where we're collaborating with Right to Play. You're collaborating with Right to Play, and I don't often get inspired by stories or quotes, things like that. But you were the guest speaker at that lunch, and you had your story for 25 minutes, and I got really inspired. And I went up to you and talked to you after that. And after 5 minutes of talk, we ended up talking about that we have a podcast and what we do. And I heard your story, and then I asked you if you would think about coming here and talk with us. And it's great to have you here because we have a lot of cool stories that's going to come ahead here.
Yeah. And most of them are true.
And most of them are true, which we need to emphasize on that. Yeah, most of them are true, actually. But it's funny because, as Kim mentioned here, you grew up in Colorado.
I did.
Yeah.
I'm a Colorado boy. I was born in the Swedish Memorial Hospital in Denver. I don't know why we have a Swedish Memorial Hospital out there in the mountains in Colorado, but we do. And that's where I come from.
Yeah.
And born in Denver and then raised outside in the spring. So I'm a Colorado kid from the beginning. So, yeah.
Originally, and that runs me back to the intro that I stated here, because you completed the Vasaloppet without never having had skis on. And for most Europeans, when they think about Colorado, they think of snow.
Yeah, actually, and for most Americans as well. Like you go to Colorado to ski. My family we live quite south in the state, just south of Colorado Springs, and I think inherently, look. Mom, Dad, love you guys, but I think inherently we're a pretty lazy family growing up. Just skiing, we certainly went like sledding. Yep. We did all sorts of other things. Like I did ample things to break my arm as a kid, falling out of trees and all that stuff, that's fine. But in terms of actually getting up, doing the ski pass thing, and certainly not cross-country skiing. That wasn't such a big thing in Colorado, especially then.
No.
But even downhill, it just wasn't really a thing. So I figured I'd start with... Vasaloppet.
Yeah, like most people think.
And Vasaloppet, this is a very traditional Swedish ski run, and it's 90 kilometers.
That's right.
And on cross-country skis, you don't get any help from downhill here. You have to muscle your way through 90 kilometers of skiing. Yeah. And it's quite a challenge, and you never put on skis on your feet until the day you actually did that run. Until
the morning of the race, yeah. And it's funny because there's a couple of different ways to describe the numbers, right? So we could say, of course, in Norway we have like 9 miles, but I was like 90 kilometers. Like the bigger the number, the better. If I could break that down into inches and make it still sound relevant, I'd do that. But the morning of the race is the first time I ever skied, and you really get to know yourself. It was it's minus 17 degrees, 7 o'clock in the morning in Sälen, Sweden. I mean, it's Sweden, so there's an ABBA cover band pumping up the crowd off to the side. 16,000 people lined up at the start line to do the race. Everyone has skied before, except for me. And it was incredible.
But you were also looking one of the most professional, maybe on the starting line.
In Australia, there's a saying, and maybe it goes all over the place, but they say all the gear, no idea. Yeah. And so I because the story got quite big, right? I mean, taking it back, and we can go into that in a little bit when we talk about that piece, but the story gained a lot of momentum in Australia because I was doing it for a purpose, in particular, a children's charity. And that's, one thing kind of led to another. And I was fortunate enough to get put in contact with the Norwegian Olympic ski team because the story became quite big in Australia, and they reached out and offered to actually sponsor me with all the gear. They gave me a lot of support, connected me with a woman, a cross-country skier from Slovenia that I was able to learn and train from in Sydney, and get me up to a competency level to do this race. Because as it turns out, for the listeners at home, 90 kilometers of skiing isn't easy to do if you've never done it before.
No, I bet.
We have our CEO, Stuart Stambra. When I first took him skiing here in Norway, there wasn't much technique. There was a lot of willpower, and he's strong and he's well trained, but he got ridiculously tired in his arms from doing it. And if you're not, I mean, I'm not saying all Scandinavians are technical wonder kids on skis, but you when you learn it from a young age, at least you're a bit more efficient. And I mean, I've never been even close to doing 90 kilometers in one go. I mean, maybe you do 30, and then you'll be super tired after that.
Yeah.
And so what you did there, to put into perspective, it's quite a. How do you even come up with that?
Yeah.
Such a crazy idea to do it. Of course, it's a great thing for charity.
100%.
But also, you could have done many other things for charity.
Yep. Yeah. It's a fine balance of having a lot of fun, creating a crazy story, showing people, and I truly believe this, and this comes from me as a young age. Like I don't just believe it. I know that anything is possible. And when you set yourself for big, crazy goals, especially when it's driven by things like being able to help kids, like with Right to Play, along the way, you can really and truly do anything. And it's funny, you're talking about with the CEO that you took out skiing. I saying about the technique. It reminds me of what my business professor used to say about me in school. He's like, Josh, you are often wrong, but you're always confident. And it's just like this blind confidence, even though you don't know exactly what you're doing. Yeah, it gets you there. But yeah, without technique, it can tire you out. So I always have full respect for every sport that I go into, because every challenge is something completely different and very, very, very different training and like very different skill sets from one another. And I don't take them as, I'll just show up and figure it out. Like, you've got to put the work into it. And some I've learned that I needed to put a lot more work into than I did at the time. So it's always a lot of respect, but yeah. It's, for me, it comes down to the dream is the most important thing. So dream first, identify the dream, and then work out the details later.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
But you, because you went to community college in Washington
State,
in state, and then you kind of paved your way to Australia.
That's right.
You set yourself a goal there,
exactly,
which was not related to charity, but that was more for you personally to do that. What was the drive behind that?
It's interesting you say that, because that same business professor, his name's Jerry Glendenning, a legend in my life. The guy that quoted me, is often wrong but always confident. He asked me, I wanted to take my 2-year degree and transfer to Australia with that. And he asked me why. Now, this is my business professor asking me, so I wanted to come up with a business professor appropriate response. And I said, well, I think, the business school there in Macquarie University in Sydney is rated quite high and blah, blah. And I came up with all these kind of technical responses. And he's like, he's looking at me, he's like, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be awesome. That's why you're going. Like, it's going to be a great experience. I was like, yeah, actually, you're right. Yeah,
but definitely. You felt you had to defend going to Australia, leading his class.
Yeah. And it was actually a one-on-one chat with him. I thought I'm talking to my business professor. I had to speak from this, kind of real routine, kind of logical kind of perspective. And he's like, no. Yes, he goes, blah, blah, blah. He's like, it's going to be amazing over there. That's why you're going. I was like, yeah, actually. So it's funny because the mindset, the endurance mindset, and the goal setting that I've really picked up over the last number of years, it's not just with the challenges, and that's a really good call out, because it did start, probably even prior to that, but that one of the biggest challenges that I had was moving to Australia from the US, and I'd never been there. I didn't know anybody there. I grew up in the mountains, and I just wanted to go live at the ocean, and I remember starting with the dream, because the community college that I had at the time, South Puget Sound in Washington State, they didn't have an exchange agreement with Macquarie University, the university I wanted to go to. And so I volunteered time and actually worked with the exchange office. Really lovely people there. But I worked with them and sent packets of information back and forth. I mean, we're not talking email. It was printing, putting in massive manila envelopes and mailing them off, and engaged in this dialogue between the two schools, and through that kind of cut a path for transfer between basically like an educational courseway between South Puget Sound Community College and Macquarie University. And I went on that. It was the dream. And when I first met them, again, they're great folks, but I remember they said, well, you might need to pick another school because we don't have a relationship with a school that close to Sydney. But that was outside of my dream. My dream, I wanted to live in Sydney. So details later, I just kept doing the work and established the relationship. And I got an email about a year later after going to the school there from another girl that had gone on that same transfer, and she emailed me. She's like, hey, I just want to say thanks because I know that you did a lot of the work to establish that relationship between the two schools. And I was like, yeah, it's just dream first and just figure it out.
Yeah, you created your own path.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, we can see that, and it's inspiring. But that is what our students do. You know, they obviously go to the place you left, but they have to also figure out what their dream is and then pursue that. And that is, I think you knew that you wanted Sydney, right? But I think a lot of the students that we help, some might want to go to California or New York.
Yeah,
I mean, typical places they've heard about. But
the best place in the U.S. also Colorado. Sorry, I'm a little biased.
many. There's actually a lot of people that want to go there, but they also want to do that because they want to go skiing. Yeah, I'll add that.
I've heard they do that there too.
But there's a lot of golfers in Denver. You know, that's a popular place for Scandinavians to go. So it's, but I think it's you need to take responsibility for. If you have a vision and an ambition, you need to. Of course, we. And in our job with our student athletes, we're here to help them with the path. I mean, in your case, you just managed to get one agreement with a school setup where you were already at, which is great. But for us, it's more we have to guide them, but it's based on what they want, and it's our job to go out and find it. But I think to take that leap of wanting to go from safe home to experience something else, that is a huge thing.
It's a huge thing. It's by far the most impactful thing that I've ever done in my life. Was giving myself the permission to be that person, to change schools or to go to another school in a whole different country. And then when you land, it's like I still go back to it. And we were talking a number of years ago. It was 2004 into 2005. I started the school year 2005 in Australia. So it was a little while ago, but it was the single most impacting experience that I'd ever had. And I guess as a point of advice for students, for folks that would be interested in making a shift like that, is exactly what I learned in this story from that professor of mine. Because we can really, especially when they're talking, there's this justification mode we go through. Like, we're going to justify it to our friends. We're going to justify it to our family. Excuse me. I remember early on, a lot of my friends and family, there was this kind of funny transition where I was crazy for wanting to relocate. I'd never been to Australia before. Why would I go over there and all this? And so we feel like we have to justify, like I did with the professor. It's a good business school, and my dollar will go further over there, and all this stuff. But my challenge, I guess, to the students listening to this is actually really, really connect with what my business professor, funnily enough, helped me connect with, which was like, but what's the story? Like, what is the thing? I mean,
deep inside, why do you want to do that?
Why do you want to? It could be California, it could be Colorado, it could be Idaho, it could be wherever anywhere in the world. But what is that thing in you where, okay, got it. There's the details and they're relevant. So I'm not saying that they're useless. They're definitely relevant. Why are you interested in that school or that state? But the details aside of how you're really looking forward to getting that degree, fantastic. But what's that experience? Like, really connect to that, because that's the thing I must admit, years later, it's that experience that changed my life. And really being open and connected to that, which funny enough didn't come from me being like, in my early 20s wanting to go off and do this. I want to just surf in Australia. It was my business professor that helped me reconnect to the importance of that experience. It wasn't just because this is going to be a good business degree. It was like, no, you're going to grow as a person. So yeah, connect with that.
But we obviously get a lot of preferences from our students that they've decided on, I want to go the US route.
Sure.
And then we talk to them and we're on the same page. And what are we looking for here? Because we all, of course, every college recruiting process is unique.
Sure.
And there's many reasons for wanting to go. Some really care about their sporting ambition and really want to make it maybe professional if they're good enough for that. Others really want to go to high-end academic school. Others might just want to have the greatest experience of all in Colorado to go skiing. Sure. and combine that with their sport and degree. But we also have to, there is a recipe to this, but each process will be different.
Yep.
And we have to kind of make it up a little bit as we go. We've seen enough cases that we know how to navigate, but also how, the process is with maybe something changes along the way, or there's been a change in what they really wanted to study. That can happen. So I think it's also the flexibility and people do change over time. And we work with these students for quite a long time.
Obviously, I changed over time because when I went to the US, I talked to Stu, who's the CEO, and I said that I wanted to go to a big city at first.
Yep.
Ended up in Boston, big city.
Oh yeah, I've never been there.
Yeah, great city, my favorite city.
Yeah, cool.
And then after that year, I talked to Stu again because I wanted to transfer. And not because I didn't love the city, but I wanted to do something else academically and wanted to explore more the US. And I'm a big skier, downhill skier, and always loved it. And then I talked to Stu if there was any possibility to end up at a school where there's, possibly going skiing on Saturdays and Fridays and Thursdays and Wednesdays and all the others. And then I ended up in a small area in New Hampshire. So from, my first time going over, I wanted to be in a big city. And then after a year, when you get a bit more confident with your English, you get a bit more confident with the country you're in.
Sure.
And then exploring more of that country. And then I ended up in New Hampshire where, you're surrounded by the White Mountains. You could go skiing every day. And, firsthand experience, that was brilliant because you change over those, 4 years you're there as well. Yeah. And I think that goes for a lot of things. But I was going to touch on this a bit later, but I think it suits better to touch on it right now. But usually when we talk to former clients we've had here on the podcast, and usually what the advice they give to younger athletes and younger students thinking about going, I think that suits well with your story as well. That they always say, just go for it. Because if that's something that's inside of you that you sort of think about, the US would be a dream, or school in the rest of the world would be a dream, just go for it because you could always come back. Did you ever think about that as well? Like, all right, I'm going to go for Australia because I know that Colorado and Washington are always there. If it doesn't suit me, just go for it.
Absolutely. It is that. And as I said, it's go for it despite the feedback that you're getting, which is kind of a point I was getting to before. I remember when I was wanting to move over there, like I said, the response was, you're crazy for doing this. Like, why would you go? And friends and family. And though coming from a place of care, they were like, oh, why are you going to go over and do it? So at one point in your life, when you're on your path, you will be involved in things where people first identify as crazy, and then something funny happens. After a little while, it evolves to lucky. And I remember when I was in Australia, it was like a year later, I went home for Christmas and my friends were like, oh, you live over there, you're so lucky. I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Because a year ago I was crazy because I just went for it. I backed myself, and that just really, and I've got another point to that as well, actually, to make it a little bit more practical. I'm going to say something a little bit controversial because I'm a motivational speaker, right? I give presentations for a living quite often. And I'm kind of bored with talk about purpose. or with motivation, because we talk about it as if it's something that you're supposed to be able to go get, right? I'm going to go off, I'm going to go to that purpose place in the world, I'm going to find my purpose, and I've got my purpose, now I'm going to set my purpose on my desk and I'm good. No, like to me, I think purpose is a byproduct of action. So in that, just go for it. It could come across as like a TED Talk kind of title of like, yeah, follow your dreams, #inspiration, live my best life. But it's like, well, but actually when you do rip in and go for it and actually create, when you turn your vision into a verb, write that down. But when you turn your vision into a verb and actually do something with it, purpose comes as a byproduct of that. Motivation comes as a byproduct of that, but it's just backing yourself and going and doing the thing. Yeah. I'm a motivational speaker. I just told you I don't believe in motivation. How about that?
Yeah. Well, Truls is rarely inspired, but I can see from his eyes here he's
I'm I totally
inspired
agree.
right now.
Yeah, I am. So
good man.
We'll get back to sort of the main story. You ended up living in Australia for 13 years.
Yeah, it's
right?
on 13 years.
And you ended up being on the board of Macquarie University.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah. So it's fun how you created your own path. You ended up living there for 13 years, and then you ended up being on the board of that school.
I was on the executive, the non-exec board of the university. And so I wasn't on the student board. I was actually on the executive committee board. Yeah. So I was listed as the youngest registered board director in Australia.
And this is a big school as well.
It was a massive school.
Yeah.
It was great. So that actually kind of came to pass because I volunteered for, speaking of TED, but like TEDx Macquarie University event. I volunteered there and got to know the dean quite well. And she had, she's the vice dean, and she recommended, just for my own learning process, she said there was a spot open on the board of the university and asked if I would apply for it. And I said, why? And she said, just for interview experience. I think it'll be good for you. It's a panel interview and they're going to be hammering questions at you. And they wanted to bring someone onto the board of the university that would head up campus engagement and help with marketing, social media, because that was starting to become a pretty big thing a number of years ago, and basically help guide through that. And so I did the interview. I was asked back for another interview, and then I got a packet of sheets, like legal documents in the mail asking me to sign and do a background check because I got the position. So I was a board director for 6 years.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's quite funny.
And while you were in Australia, and this is the next part we're going to talk about, the charity adventure is born.
Mm-hmm.
So Josh, as I mentioned, I'm not easily inspired, and I don't really get inspired about a lot of things. But there was one thing that really stood out to me when we met at the Right to Play lunch, and when you were a guest speaker there, or motivational speaker there. Mm-hmm. And I think you know what I'm talking about here.
It's interesting, man. So I do know what you're talking about because you told me about that when we had met, and I very much appreciated the feedback that I got from you on this, actually, because this sentence is really what I use as a litmus test for designing and guiding my life. Because often we get into things, we're so close to obviously we're really close to our own stories. We're really close to our own problems, our own situations, our own, the people involved. For me, I think it's really hard to make conscious design decisions about life on a regular basis because a lot of things can become default when we don't take a higher level view. So to that point, what I shared in that talk, if I'm thinking correctly, is there's a question that I ask, and that is, if my life story was a book, is that a book that I would love to read? And what that does is, and I'm going to say that again, actually. So if my life story was a book, is that a book that I would love to read for the listeners? And it's a pretty big question when we ask ourselves that. And it's not like I heard that Josh guy say this thing once and I answered it, and yeah, my book's great and it's fine. I ask myself this all the time to make sure that I'm on track with what I want. And the thing that I like about this question is that it's so specific for each and every one of us in our own journey. So it doesn't have to be like, if your life was an adventure book, is that a book you like to read? Because maybe your book isn't an adventure book. You know, maybe people are like, I just really want to learn how to do that style of knitting and I want to nail it. You know, whatever that is, fantastic. But like, you have to really connect with what it is that your story is, and just picture yourself. Like, if you're reading that book, you're the lead character in that book, and you're reading it, and that person's just spending a lot of time with that group or that job or that team or that whatever, and you just know they're not growing. You could feel it. You'd be like, man, I swear, if I turn 3 more pages and this dude is still, or this woman is still in this story, I'm going to be pretty annoyed by this book.
I want to put that book down.
Yeah, I want to put that book down. I want to start another book. Like, I wish I could actually just rewrite this book. You can, because that's the thing. It's your life. And when you're looking at that as a story for me in my book, I knew if I stayed, I was a sales manager in a retail store in Colorado, and I desperately wanted to move to Australia. And no offense to the industry, that was very helpful and served a lot in my life at the time, being in retail sales, which was great, but it wasn't my book long term. I wanted to move to Australia. I felt I was like 22 at the time, and I just wanted something different. And I just knew, like, if that book didn't shift, if I was still reading that book now, I wouldn't love that book as much as I love it now. And I must say, you know, Janteloven aside, like, I love my book. Like, I would read it. I'm very proud of it, and because I've really given myself the permission to write it. And everyone has that, no matter where they're at in their book. It's just giving yourself the permission to rewrite that. So yeah, it's initially asking myself that question the first time really had me take stock of where I was and what I was doing, and whether or not I needed to change it. And often you do.
Because our students, I would say they might have their most exciting chapter of their book during their 4 years in the US.
Sure.
And we talk about, you know, you can always come back if you don't like it. Then, yeah, like you say, rewrite your book and study at home, or do whatever you work at home. That's possible. But, you know, you can always take the safe route, which is, just do what most of your other countrymen or friends or family members did, and that is quite the ordinary, but that can work for many people.
Absolutely.
But it's also if you take that leap of faith and you go to another country, like you did when you went to Australia, I did when I went to South Carolina, you did when we helped you to Boston, and you know, we're all here in this seat now talking about it, reflecting on those decisions, and they were amazing for us. So it is. I would certainly argue that I hear much more from our students that are graduated, and that's part of doing this podcast, to hear their journeys and what, hear about that chapter in their book, and see what new chapters will be a result of that decision they made back when they were 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think an important thing to mention for that as well, when you're 18, 19 years old, most don't really know what they want, but they have a dream. Most people do have a dream. And in my case, I think I just needed that nudge. So if it wasn't for my dad that knew me really well, he was the guy that said, go to the US, Jules.
Yeah.
Do something different, because I know that you always wanted to go to the US or wanted to explore a different part of the world. But if it wasn't for him just telling me that, given the approval, I don't think I would have gone. So it's just that little sentence, that little nudge that he gave me as well, that really realized that, you know, the dream came alive.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for young, you know, kids today as well, that talk with your parents. They know you best, or talk with your loved ones, because that nudge might help you in the right direction.
And you talk about having the higher view. They might help you see that perspective, rather than you just being in your zone, just thinking, you know, it's harder to take a step back and maybe look at the whole scenario.
And I think there's another thing here as well, which is that space and time. Because I certainly remember when I was 18, 19, kind of going into 20, looking back and thinking, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm 40 next year. I still don't know what I want to do. And I love that. Like in a way, like in the grand scheme of things, like, yes, I'm on a career trajectory. Yes, I'm building a platform for adventuring and helping other people achieve their goals. Like I have my passions, but I always look at it as, and this could be a me thing, but it's worked for me. So maybe some people could benefit from it. And I look at I always put the word next on, like, what do I want to do next? And it just in my life, it's helped me kind of take things in more digestible chunks. Because when we're designing what education platform, or pathway we're going to take, when we're shaping that degree up to become X in career industry Y, and like we don't always know what that's going to look like, especially when you haven't traveled yet, or you just haven't experienced enough yet to really know yourself in different environments. I think my kind invitation to that would say, like, well, rather than asking yourself or laboring yourself with what do you want to be or what do you want to do, it's like, what do you want to do next? And often it makes it a little bit easier to break that down.
Not as daunting. To just
not
think
as
of the
daunting.
next thing. That's like a small little step.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And maybe people, like, from that great conversation you had with your father, because they could maybe, because they've seen journeys in different stages or different, chapters in their books, and it's easier for other people to see, I could see you doing that next. But I almost wonder if that's not the view that people think from when they actually do lend us some kind advice. Because even for other people giving you advice on something, it'd be so hard to say, Dross, you need to do this forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it doesn't really, how does that even work? It's just, next. That sounds like a great conversation you had with your dad.
Yeah,
Good for him.
But we live by our ethos that every day we help driven people pursue ambition at our company.
Ethos.
And the pursue ambition, that has always been, and I remember coming up with this, it's a tagline, slogan.
It's great.
But it meant more to us. We were sitting in South Carolina, we were still students at the time, this is Stuart and me, and we founded this company, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We were still young and naive, but we were, we have good hearts and just trying to make stuff happen, building something we didn't know what it was going to become. But we had a passion to try and get others to do what we did and help them get to the States. Yeah. But then we were sitting in our dining room and we were listening to Rolling Stones, Gimme Shelter. We had that on repeat. It was one of those, we loved that song. We
Get
played
that
it
in the background here right now.
And then we'd just seen the movie The Departed. And that's obviously a Boston accent.
Yep.
And we loved the Scorsese, DiCaprio, Matt Damon. We loved that film. And we were kind of watching that on repeat and listening to Gimme Shelter by Rolling Stones. Wow. But then we wanted to come up with, like, we need something to inspire people what we want to do. And we loved the word pursue, because that was... with a Boston accent, Matt Damon was saying, "Do not pursue." And we loved we got caught up in that word "pursue."
Yeah.
Which, okay, but we like the word because pursue means to go and get something.
Yeah. It's
a strong word, and in a Boston accent, it sounds even better. Yeah. But then, we could have like you said, pursue your dream. Dream is like, for us, is a bit more. Yeah. That's not concrete enough. Yeah. That might never happen. Yeah. But we like the word ambition because that is much a stronger word. It's I feel we connected much more to that, and we didn't want to add in your ambition. I mean, that's a given that it's when you pursue ambition that it's your ambition doing it. So we want to just short and sweet. And I remember the day that slogan was born, in that whole mix of things. But at the core of that is pursue ambition. That can be something completely different for you than it is for me. And for every recruiting case we do for college is unique. The ambition is unique in education, in sports, in their motivation of why they want to go and do this, and their career goals, and maybe they don't even know yet. Yeah. But that was a way for we love working with people that have this drive, that want to achieve something, and we feed off that. And we're lucky to work with a lot of our students that really, really inspire us with what they've achieved. It could be scoring a great goal in an important game. It could be improving their grades from being quite low to graduating with top A's all around at good schools, because we've seen the change from they were 18 till they're 23 and go on to say a grad school or land a great job somewhere or start their own company. So these things, we feed off that and we get inspired every day. But that pursue, that can be many things, and ambition also many things you can go and get.
I connect with that in so many ways, because I like the pursue, because as I said, that's an action word. That's a verb. You could picture something being done in that, and the ambition, because ambition is great, but it's like kinetic energy. It's like this ambition, like I have this ambition, but or like I really have an ambition to be I don't know why tap dancer came to mind, but I'm going to go with it. To be a tap dancer, but I'm just, it's like, but the pursuit of that, because that is what brings that ambition to life. It's like, if you don't have pursuit without ambition, if you don't have ambition without pursuit, it's not going to work. That's a really good framing, actually.
Yeah, because it's sometimes it is about the pursuit, not the end results in itself. It's about, let's look at this. We help someone to the States. They pursue their bachelor's degree. The end result, the ambition was to get the bachelor's degree. But the pursuit is from you started that process and everything you experienced in all those years that led to that. I mean, you got the paper saying you got your bachelor's, but it's all the other experiences you got during your time studying and playing sport and learning about culture and experience in the States, all that is the pursuit.
100%.
And it's not just, you have a bachelor diploma with a certain grade point average. That just says you completed that. But I think what you experienced, that's, for me, when I did my bachelor's, it's more about the actual process, not about the diploma that I got in the end.
Absolutely. And even if you want to get mechanical and thinking about it, like, organizations, because I know from being on the hiring side in the big four firms, so I was at PwC and KPMG, and what you're looking for, great, all due respect to the systems and processes around it, but there's the degree and qualification. Good.
You need that.
You need that. Okay. But what you're looking for is the people that have gone through in the pursuit of that have grown, have challenged, and have experienced, this was a big one, but have experienced failure. That's another thing I'm a huge fan of, is people that have really bombed something, because that's when you know that they know themselves at the face of failure. So any listeners out there, don't ever think that failure is a bad thing. Like, embrace it.
You learn more from from failing and getting up and doing it then in a different way than just all the time nailing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, because even that story is like a man or woman that goes from win to win to win to win. It's like boring. But real, the human sides, the experiences that go through that, that's the stuff that, when that comes in the door for joining a career or a team or, you name it, you want people that have grown in the pursuit of their ambition. You want people that have really learned and have battle scars, as I kind of made the playful comment before, having battle scars in our career and the way in which we grow and shape ourselves due to the experience we've gained along the way. That's the pursuit. You want people that have spent time in the pursuit. The degree is nice, but
you need the degree to get into KPMG. You can't just come with, hey, I failed a lot and I learned from it, and can I get a manager job here?
So when's pay?
Yeah. But we do speak with a lot of our students every semester, and some of them,
lights are off.
Yeah, lights are off. Let's keep going. But we learn that sometimes some weeks are difficult. Sometimes you're homesick and you have to go through a process where you got to get over this hump where we know it's going to get better, but you have to stick with it and work it out. And there's sometimes that can take over too much. And I think that's important to have people backing you. We are certainly there to speak, but also you talk about your dad being a supporter of you doing it, and also with your coaches and assistant coach and your academic advisors, all the support network around you. You need to. Sometimes you need when the going gets tough, and you can get help here, and that is important.
Yeah,
and if you don't quit, then that's when you come out stronger on the other side.
100%, absolutely. Because that's the. I mean, we hear about endurance all the time, and often we think about it in terms of how far someone can run,
or ski,
or you swim, or you name it. But it's the endurance mindset is the foundation on anything having to do with endurance. And people that go through those experiences and all of a sudden they realize I remember in my experience, living in Australia, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm missing people's birthdays, or I'm not going to be able to make it home for this time, or my brother got married and I was in exams. It's like, and when you do start to kind of miss, because we're human, these things are normal and natural. But when you do start to really go through and learn that this journey does, and this is a big part of it, but this journey is going to take sacrifice. I can't have my cake and eat it too. I can't have all the stuff that I really like from back home and all the new stuff that I like from here, and everything's just great. It's like my birthday every day. No, there's going to be some points where you're like, ugh, okay, this journey means I had to let go of bits of that journey. And that is part of the endurance mindset. That's just the evolution and the shift of what it is that we, the ingredients that we learn and develop along the way that bring us to being where we're going to be on further down the track. I just heard it myself. I'm not saying let go of your family. That was not my point.
Yeah. You can always go back.
Yeah, you always go back to your family.
All right, so now we'll get to what I think is a really, really fun part of your life story. Could you tell us about how the charity adventure became a reality and how you became the charity adventure?
Yeah, it was a process of evolution, because when I started this off, like when I did Vasaloppet, I never expected that race to change my life in the way that it did. Certainly didn't expect to be sitting here in the studio having a conversation with you guys about it. And for me, it was doing Vasaloppet to help my friend and his wife it was a grief counseling camp for children that have lost a loved one. And I was going to try to help them raise money and some awareness. And at the end of it, by the time I'd finished Vasaloppet, the physical part of Vasaloppet, because the emotional part's not going to be there forever. Yeah. But it's that race produced, we had there's like 3 live national television interviews, some interviews in Sweden, interviews in Norway, and then the US, and there was a lot of exposure, and over 500 families signed up to that charity that didn't know it existed before, off the back of finishing it. And when I finished the race, I remember I was in a conversation with my mother. I got home and called her at I think it was like the next day. And we were speaking about it, and she said, now the opportunity, what you've created from this model, it's not an opportunity, it's a responsibility, because all of this great stuff happened for the charity. And so I looked at that, and I realized I had an interesting model on my hands. So if I kept doing the hardest things in the world, these hardest physical challenges in the world, and things I have no idea how to do, and document that process to show people that some dude like me can do these things. I'm not very physically adept from my background, and all the while each challenge goes to raise awareness for a new children's cause, then really, really great things can happen. So that's where the responsibility comes in. It's not fun anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is fun, but it's not just fun. It is a responsibility. And so from there, I had a really kind of deep conversation with myself and some friends and some family, and I've completely redesigned my life to put these challenges at the forefront of everything I do. So I don't earn any money from the challenges. So 100% of the funds raised goes directly to every cause. And I do have the content, so I do speak about it. And there are some certain sponsorships and things that we're talking about in the background to facilitate more of these challenges coming to life and bringing other people into the challenges as well. So that's kind of how it, that's kind of how it happened. And I remember I was in an interview in Australia on TV, and they welcomed me back on air to talk about my second challenge after Vasaloppet. And then when I went back on, it was on the Today Show. So it was like 2.2 million viewers, live TV, and walked out. And then they introduced me on the set as the charity adventure. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool.
Stuck. And it was born.
And it was born.
Yeah. I'm just going to go through each one right now, and then we're going to touch on them later. But so Vasaloppet, you did that for charity. That's a 90-kilometer ski race. You had to finish in 13 hours or get disqualified. You never stood on skis before, and you finished in 11 hours?
11 hours, 8 minutes, and 58 seconds. Not that I was counting.
No, check. And then you did unicycling for charity, and this is the best part. It's a downhill mountain unicycling in San Sebastian in Spain, and you had 4 months of training.
Yeah.
Then you had
14 kilometers down a mountain.
14 kilometers down a mountain. And then you had off-road Finnmark for charity, which is it the toughest?
It is the world's hardest mountain bike race.
Yeah, and that's 700 kilometers and never done an off-road race before.
I've never done a mountain bike race before.
All right, so we're there. And then you hand cycle the length of Japan for charity, which is 2,112 kilometers.
Yeah.
It's a 22-day journey. You did that. And then cross the Atlantic Ocean on a bike for charity, a bike mounted on a sailboat. And then the next thing you're going to do is run the length of Norway in the air for charity.
Yeah.
So now that we mentioned all of these and the listeners understand who we're talking about here and what we're going to talk about, I just want to touch on what I thought was incredible. You did unicycling for charity down a mountain in San Sebastian. How did that came about?
It's a funny conversation. It was just before I was actually going to go off to do Vasaloppet. I was at a dinner at a friend's. A friend invited me to her friend's house, and the conversation came up, and we were talking about the ski race, and someone asked, like, "What are you going to do next?" I was like, "Well, I don't know. I wasn't really anticipating anything next, but I had heard about this sport coming out of Canada, fairly newish, called mountain unicycling, or Muni." And so what I did is I just brought that up. I said, I don't know, as a bit of a joke. I was like, I've been hearing about this this thing called mountain unicycling. And the guy whose house it was said, "How did you hear about Muni?" Like, I was like, I didn't even know it was called Muni, dude. I just mountain unicycling. His eyes got really big. He's like, "Wait a second." He goes into another room, no joke, comes out with a mountain unicycle. This massive mountain bike tire, reinforced tubing, and a disc brake under the seat and all this. And he'd changed his shirt as well. And on the chest of his shirt, it said NBUC. And I was like, "What is this?" He's like, "This is the Northern Beaches Unicycle Club. I'm the president." No joke. And he said, he goes, "So the world's biggest mountain unicycle race is coming up in 4 months after you finish Vasaloppet." And he's like, "We will train you. I'll get you a mountain unicycle and have you join the Australian unicycle team." And the race was called Unicon, of course.
Obviously.
And so I was competing with about 350 other people from around the world in the world's hardest mountain unicycle race, 14 kilometers down the mountain. And I didn't end up last. I was 5th from last. I was pretty proud of that.
How many bones broken?
Yeah, surprisingly none. I look like a full hockey goalie going down this thing. I had gear on all over because I fell. Yeah. I fell a lot. But you just fall, and you're allowed. It's okay if you fall. You just get back up. You have to be very careful though, because that race that went around cliff edges. I mean, the race organizers did a good job to keep it safe, but there was a lot of margin for error. And it took an hour and 45, just under 45, an hour and 44 minutes to get down 14 kilometers on one wheel over rocks and steps and up hills as well. And yeah, it was involved.
Yeah.
At least only 1 hour and 45, but to bike through Japan with a hand bike took 22 days.
22 days.
Tiring.
About 10 hours a day, every single day. Yeah, that was... Yeah, you really get to learn a lot about yourself when you're hand cycling along, Japanese highways at the eye level of mountain, the middle of semi-truck tires going by you. And that was interesting. Up and down mountains and through every type of climate you can imagine. When I started it down in the south, it was on March 11th. So that was the 8-year anniversary of the big tsunami that took a lot of lives in Japan. Started it that day in honor of the families that were affected by this. Because it was a charity that was helping children from the families affected by the tsunamis, of which Japan has about 150 on average earthquakes a year. I mean, it's just constantly getting hammered. So there's a lot of work to be done with the kids there. But I started on March 11th down in the southernmost tip of Japan, down in Kyushu, and made my way through Kyushu, Honshu, which is the big middle island where Tokyo's in, and then up to Hokkaido, and Hokkaido all the way to the far north. So when I started in Kyushu, it was like tropical, like palm trees, beautiful beaches. Oh, it's just gorgeous. And then the further I'd climb my way north, it was, as my brother who was on the support team with me, he said it felt like we were going from Costa Rica to Siberia. It was just like 5-6 foot walls, like almost 2 meter walls of snow along the highways, and my hands were just freezing. I had to put on like 4 pairs of wool socks and then plastic bags over my shoe to keep the wind out, because I mean, literally was like, my legs were stuck out and I'm just like hand cycling like this, and my feet are the ones taking the wind the entire time. Frozen. All of my toes were purple at the end of almost every day up there. But yeah, great experience.
Yeah, you did that as well.
Yeah.
And then you also, I think this will be a fun story. You crossed the Atlantic Ocean on a bike for
I did
charity.
do that.
Yep.
Did that. So that came to life because I gave a talk in Mexico about a year and a half ago. And in the audience were a couple of guys that came up afterwards and said that they were going to charter a yacht to cross the Atlantic Ocean, and as part of the ARC, so this Atlantic Yacht Rally crossing. And they asked if I wanted to be on that, to which I said absolutely. And then I asked when, because I'll prioritize that. And in the course of the conversation, I said, you know, one thing, and this has been in my mind for quite a while, I thought it would be really interesting to get like a stationary bike from a gym and put it on a cargo ship and cross the ocean and try to cycle as many kilometers on that bike as I could to as however many kilometers as it took to cross the sea. I'd cycle on the bike while that boat was moving to actually cross the ocean on a bicycle. I told them this idea and they're like, well, we can strap a bike onto the boat, like no problem. And so they were all excited about it. I talked to the captain. He was more captain about it. He's like, that's not a great idea. You know, you're going to blow your knees out because at any given time, he asked, he's like, have you sailed before? I'd never sailed before. So he's like, okay. So, you know, any given time, the boat's going to be at like 45 degrees. And when cycling at that, you can easily really damage your knee at an ongoing exercise that way. So he said, what you're going to need to do is find a way to get a gimbal, like a hammock, kind of, so where the bike always stays still no matter what the sailboat's doing underneath it. And turns out he and his friend run a fabrication group, like an engine. They're engineers, but yeah, a fabrication shop down in the south of England in Lymington, and they took on the job. So I went and I got a bike in England. I was in London at the time, just traveling. I was there for a talk, and I'm not good at eBay, so I'm on eBay. I found a recumbent bike, and I hit buy, thinking that was going to take me to the buying instructions. I accidentally bought the bike. I just got this email said, "Congratulations, you just spent £1,000 on a recumbent bike." That's brilliant. So I had to hire a van that day and go out and pick this damn thing up 2 hours away, and then took it to the shop down in the south of England. It was a 7-hour road trip that one day because I accidentally bought this bike on eBay. But they repurposed the recumbent bike, set it up to this resistance mechanism. Took them a couple of months. We shipped the whole thing down via cargo ship into Port Denia in Spain, where they fit it onto the yacht. It was a 92-foot sailing yacht. And then, about a month later, we sailed. So we sailed out from Gran Canaria over to St. Lucia. And within 14 days, I cycled 6,434 kilometers. And I had to do at least as many kilometers as the boat sailed every day, including jibing and all the other stuff that it was doing. And I did it. I beat the boat by about 500 kilometers. And it was great. When I got into St. Lucia, the captain's like, I want this bike off my boat. And I was like, ugh, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to do this? And I went into the sailing kind of port authority in St. Lucia in the Caribbean, and I told him, I said, look, I've just crossed the sea. And the woman finished my sentence. She goes, on a bicycle. We know, we've been following this on social media. This is brilliant. I was like, oh, good. I said, do you know of anyone that would like to have this bike? Like, I need to get rid of this bike, and the ship is actually leaving at noon. It was the morning, and the captain's pretty strict. And she said, yes. She goes, if you will give it to us, we'll set up a monument for you here in St. Lucia that people can come and sit on the first bicycle to cross the ocean. So now I have a monument in the Caribbean named after me in St. Lucia. So yeah, it's a lot of funny stories along the way.
That's a cool story. So how many world records do you have now?
I've got 3, and like world first. So I'm the first person in the world to finish Vasaloppet without ever having skied before. And the race organizers told me that. First person to cross the Asian continent on using only my arms, which is a bit of a bizarre one. So cross the entire distance there, 2,112 kilometers using just my arms. And then the first person in the world to bicycle across the Atlantic Ocean. And it's funny because Guinness and I know the team in London fairly well. There's a person in particular I speak to at Guinness Records often about these things. And they didn't give me a Guinness record for the past couple because they said that they're too, let's see if I'm phrasing this right, I'm remembering the email I got from them. They're too difficult for other people to replicate, so therefore they're not really allowed to be called a world record, but they're a world first. Yeah. To which I love. I actually wrote her back. Her name's Jen. I wrote her back. I was like, so are you saying that these are too difficult for Guinness records? She's like, keep it to yourself. Yeah. I was like, yes, I'll take it. Yeah. So that's fun.
I like that.
But you've now been drawn to Right to Play.
I have been.
And that's your next challenge is raising money for them. And we've been trying to raise money for Right to Play for a number of years. Good. And we are obviously through our one donation, one education campaign, doing it again this year, trying to get more children into education through play. And it's obviously a cause that for us, it's close to our hearts. It's about education. It's about sports or play. And, through giving a scholarship, you can help kids get education for 1 full year. And that's what we're asking our student athletes in the States to do, our former student athletes, and to raise awareness around that. Yep. For us, is important. But why did you land on Right to Play as your charity?
Well, it's in so many ways the stars aligned almost perfectly. So with every challenge that I take on, I raise awareness for a new children's cause. So for me, it's just a personal drive. I'm really passionate about helping children's charities. I mean, we could have 5 more episodes around all the things I've learned from working with kids and charities alone. So for me, I've seen too much. I can't not help kids. And the concept of protect, educate, and empower kids using elements of play is right at the heart of everything that is important to me in my universe. It's really play, giving people the space and freedom to be kids and use elements of play, and then focusing on the education and development of the children in their journeys. It's almost bizarrely perfectly scripted for the way these challenges come to life and the reason that I'm passionate to do them. I came across, I've lived in Norway now for 3 years, and shortly after moving to Stavanger, some good friends of mine told me about Right to Play, so I've known of them, but I hadn't met anyone associated with Right to Play yet at the time. And then I gave a talk in Ullevål Stadium here in Oslo about 8-9 months ago. And in the audience, it was really lovely. And this woman came up and she said, "I wonder if I was going to meet you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she said, because she'd seen my talk, and she said, "I'm the person that approved the deal for the Norwegian Olympic ski team to sponsor you for Vasaloppet." I was like, "Oh," she's like, "I thought I recognized you." And then as your story went on, she's like, "Oh yeah, that's the guy." Because I was living in Australia at the time. So we had a great chat, and then we got lunch together, and she was with this incredible guy named Jimmy Vika, who is the national director for Right to Play Norway. And so the 3 of us sat down and had a chat, and she's like, I have a feeling that you two would really get along, because Jimmy's got some incredible stories, not just from the charity himself, but also his running adventures that guy does. And for the next challenge, it is in the sport of running, and he's a tough act to follow, I can tell you, just absolutely incredible. And connecting with the energy that was him, and hearing more about the charity, and then when this next challenge started to take shape, I just called Jimmy, had his details, and called him and said, "Mate, it would be an honor to represent you guys and do some ambassador work for you for the year ahead." And and the stars just aligned, and it fit with their ethos, with what they're looking to do. I think the challenge is just crazy enough that they found it really interesting and want to be a part of it. And thankfully, they were willing to have me represent them for the year ahead. So all of my efforts for the year ahead now are going for Right to Play.
Because when we spoke to Jimmy and we talked about they have ambassadors, sporting ambassadors, but you are also an ambassador, Right to Play, and our appeal to our student athletes is that they also become student athlete ambassadors of Right to Play by helping, donating, and spreading the awareness of this.
Absolutely, and it's like it's a pay it forward kind of thing, especially with when it goes back to it. It's not an opportunity to help people; it is a responsibility. And when we do have things that open up in our life, and we're on a journey, especially around growth, with education, and we have the ability to give back to others around us in the world, it's a must. I do think, and time definitely, finance, money, donations certainly helps. I think that's it's a big call out for people to get involved.
Yeah, we give or find scholarships for our student athletes, and we're asking them to give a scholarship back to someone else. That is, it's a good thing to be part of.
100%. Like I said, I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of great people in my life, and I have no doubt I'm going to continue to meet great people. Working with Olympians and working with folks from the charity space and working with different organizations and associations around bringing these challenges to life, and just all sorts of stuff. And then, giving coaching and keynote talks. You get to meet a lot of really lovely folks. The most insightful and impactful people I've ever met are kids and also kids in desperate situations, because you see resilience, like in action. You see endurance mindset. You see some of the most, some of the wisest insight on how to live a life in its fullest way from kids. And I think creating an environment that allows them the best ability to live to their fullest, it's what we need to do as people.
We need to contribute.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Definitely. And especially, we're so privileged, and I think we take it for granted sometimes. And the fact that a small amount of money can help several kids go to school for a year.
Yeah.
I think that's the most wonderful gift you can ever give to someone. And I think that's an important thing to think about when you're contributing to a great organization like Right to Play.
And you talk about you're hard to you're not inspired easily, but
Nope.
Every time I can get inspired, probably easier than you can, Truls. But when you came back from Right to Play and then Josh speaking, you were kind of glowing and you were all about it. But every time I'm involved with Right to Play and have meetings there, I feel the same thing. Yeah. It is like you say, Josh, it's a responsibility to help. And the more of our student athletes that are doing this, and it's great to see our student athletes, getting involved and helping, spreading the word, but also with some of their student funds. It's. But I think it's. This is just not just for adults with huge paying jobs to help. This is at every level, and even the students.
100%, even the students, and it's. I was given some really great advice by a charity that I worked with, a woman that was a part of this charity called Sandra Söderholm from Stavanger, actually. Amazing person. And when we went into these camps in Lebanon to meet these kids, the charity was helping them and their families, and the Syrians and Lebanese, kind of the new system of life that was there on the other side of the mountains in the Syrian border. When we went in, she said, you're probably going to get a feeling where you feel like you need to help everyone, right? You're going to hear about these causes and the situations and these families, and your heart is going to go all over the place. And she said, never, ever forget, if you can just help a person, then that is the spark that can change the world, because that person can help a person, or someone can be inspired because you helped a person. It's not people might be listening, and sometimes there's fatigue. Sometimes, which I get. I mean, I very much work and live in the charity space, and it's like, oh yeah, there's so much that needs to be done. It's like, yeah, there is, which is great because we're so many people that can help, and if so many people did one thing, if they just made the one donation, it's that is the systemic shift that we need to be able to help so many people in the world. Just starting with one.
Mm. Well, the next adventure is to run in the sky.
Yeah, there's a sentence.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the part where run and then in the sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
August 2021.
August 21, 2021, looking potentially into September. So there's a lot that the engineering team and I don't know that we don't know yet. There's a lot that's still, coming to life around it. But basically, it came to life while I was out bicycling across the ocean. So I was out there in the middle of the sea and cycling a lot, 10, 11 hours every single day, and looking up at the sky often, and just starting to realize when I was in the middle of the ocean, I realized that there was no planes, no birds, there was nothing in the sky, which was kind of different, from a different view that I'd ever seen days in a row. And then I started to think about how we interacted with the sky. And because I've been cycling for so long, I probably was a bit delirious. I thought, how interesting would it be if we could get an airship that was powered by running and be the first person to run through the sky. So when I got back to Norway, I called the Civil Aviation Authority up in Bodø and spoke to a couple different people who all really loved the story and said, yeah, that's something you could do, but you need to get proper engineers involved. And we have a process to go through for it, but they loved it. And so I've been speaking with a number of different organizations around Norway, in the US as well. We've got a former astronaut from NASA on the team helping steer the vision and the engineering direction, working with an incredible engineer out of France who's done blimp engineering before. So the idea is it'll be a massive helium blimp, like a Luftship or airship, and underneath it is so it's 180 cubic meters airships at this point, and underneath it we're inventing a running like a treadmill device that is going to power the propellers on either side. So the whole airship forward trajectory is going to be powered by me running. So
it's like out of a cartoon.
Yeah, it is very much. Most of my life is. It's like being at about 200, 250 meters in the air. And so there's a lot that, we're working with the meteorology department and working with on the wind and all this other stuff. But the view is to hopefully be able to go from Lofoten all the way down to Oslo. But the distance has shifted a few times. I was thinking Stavanger to Oslo because I used to live in Stavanger. Now I live in Oslo. I thought that'd be quite cool to get both cities on the map. But the wind between those two cities, that can either make the trip very, very fast or very, very bad.
Yeah. So, but how far are we? I mean, we're talking 1,000 kilometers, roughly.
Yeah, if it is between those two, but again, it's not the same as land kilometers because hopefully with wind carry, I'll be able to gain some. But the view is probably 40, 50 kilometers a day, so it could take up to a couple of weeks. Bringing it down at night and securing it. And
you wouldn't stay on there.
Yeah, 24 hours. Which is what I wanted to do, but they're like, no. So, when I spoke with the engineering team last week, they said that I'm going to have to go and get my hot air balloon pilot license, which I'm pretty excited about that. It's will be super useful after the challenge. And then, all sorts of other things. So I'm just documenting the whole process. So it's all on Instagram. We're building a YouTube channel here now soon as well. And so the great thing about this challenge is it's just taking people through how to bring a big idea to life because it's never been done before. And I'm just going through the processes of making it happen. So, yeah, should be fun.
We can't wait for August and to follow the adventure.
Yeah, thanks.
I just think we should finish it off by saying, follow Josh on his Instagram on the charity adventure.
Thanks.
It's been an absolute pleasure to hear your story, and I would definitely read your book if you would ever, release a book. I think Kim and I have had a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, and we got a bit philosophical there, but this is also, charity and your journey. We're inspired by different journeys. Yeah. Yours is a little bit different than to our student athletes' journeys, but a lot of the things they can relate to. And
100%.
this was a refreshing conversation, and I hope more people enjoyed it.
Trust me, the pleasure is absolutely mine, and I just hope that everyone listening to this is able to take some elements out of it, because as you said, the journey's been a little bit different with the story that's resulted, but I'm no different. Like the people listening to this have the same ability to rewrite the story or write the story that they would love to read. And also reach out if people have any questions. I always love having a chat or answering questions and helping people in their journey. And I think, the organization, like having CSUSA and really helping people along that with the program and insight and community around bringing these dreams of theirs to life is incredible. I wish I had this when I was traveling. So I think just that's a tip. Hopefully some of my story was helpful, and reach out to people around you, myself included, if we can help along the way.
Thank you so much.
Great.